everybody, and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the latest releases as a part of the Big Finish monthly range, which is of course the Lovecraft Invasion, as written by Robert Valentine. This episode stars Colin Baker as the good old Sixth Doctor, alongside companions Flip and Constance Clarke, as portrayed by Lisa Greenwood and Miranda Rayson. This episode is of course the third story as a part of the current Sixth Doctor trilogy, also featuring Scorched Earth and Cry of the Vulturess. Both episodes I have already reviewed on the Host Productions so far, and they are both stories that I thoroughly enjoyed listening to. I think that if anything, this trilogy has really showcased the strengths of this TARDIS team, as well as having some wonderful moments with Colin Baker as the Sixth Doctor, and this episode is no exception to that. Now, this review is of course a little bit later than planned compared to usual, as this episode was originally intended to come out in the back end of June 2020. However, here we are in the early days of August, finally being able to take a look at this story, as it is now here and out alongside the other July 2020 release, being Time Apart, featuring the Fifth Doctor. As per usual, in the description below there'll be all the details that you need to take a look at this story, as well as a trailer that you can listen to on the Big Finish website. Now, the Lovecraft Invasion is a story that initially got quite a lot of criticism when it was initially announced, and I was in fact completely oblivious to the controversy around HP Lovecraft and the whole idea of his writing, because I must admit he is one of those people that I've heard of his name in the past, kind of flinged around in history. However, it's somebody who I've never really got to grips with when it comes to their work. I've not read any of their work, and he's definitely not one of those writers that is a part of the usual academic syllabus, the likes of John Steinbeck and Charles Dickens and Shakespeare and all of that, and that is because Lovecraft is a rather controversial writer with lots of extreme opinions, including of course racism, xenophobia and homophobia, meaning that at first glance he doesn't particularly look like one of those writers that appeals to the Doctor Who universe. However, what is brilliant about this story is that Robert Valentine has written a story that addresses the problems with this writer in a way that is rather refreshing, because HP Lovecraft throughout this story isn't initially depicted as a monstrous villain and a character that you instantly dislike. Yes, he does obviously have dislikable traits, because that is accurate to what we know of the actual person. However, at the same time, you can also have conversations with HP Lovecraft throughout this story that are normal and like a day-to-day conversation that you would have with any other human, which I think perfectly reflects a person like him, having these extreme beliefs, but also at the same time goes about life on a daily basis doing normal things. And that is where I would like to start off this review, because I think that Alan Marriott has done an absolutely brilliant job of portraying HP Lovecraft. It is an episode entirely focused around him in more ways than one. However, the way that the character has been acted by him is rather refreshing, because yes, we do have those dislikable traits. However, at the same time, there's a number of moments throughout this story, especially in interaction with Constance Clarke, where he kind of just talks like an everyday human being, especially when he is thrown information about how his impact has affected people throughout history, and how we get to see throughout this story basically the embodiment of all of the criticisms that H.P. Lovecraft has, wonderfully written by Robert Valentine. Also, talking about the TARDIS team itself, of course within the previous stories we have had some rather interesting adventures. With Cry of the Vulturess we had a story that was focused around the TARDIS team in a rather standard Doctor Who capacity, where you have both of the companions going off and doing different things, and the Doctor hops between the team. Then with the previous review we had Scorched Earth, where it was a story that was challenging the TARDIS team. We had Constance Clarke having rather striking beliefs compared to that of Flip, who is an all-good character and believes that everybody should be treated fairly, especially when you have that war-torn setting of France. And then in this story, again, we kind of have that division between the two. However, it's a more physical division, because you have Constance Clarke in the reality of 1930s America, kind of dealing with H.P. Lovecraft, and then also at the same time you have the Sixth Doctor and Flip within H.P. Lovecraft's head, as we have a character throughout the story. He basically embodies everything that is within H.P. Lovecraft's mind, and basically makes that a reality. And we kind of have a concept that is rather familiar to Underworld, however done in a way that is a lot better and much more effective and certainly more enjoyable, because we have the Doctor and Flip going around this rather unusual landscape that is pretty much everything that H.P. Lovecraft has created within his work. In fact, I was taking a look at some artist interpretations of H.P. Lovecraft's work whilst listening to the story, and there is a lot of gothic horror kind of work within his characters. There's a lot of rather unusual people wearing these large capes, but also at the same time lots of blending between humanity and mermaids and other mythical creatures, and again that is rather well represented throughout this story, as Robert Valentine has littered the episode with lots of different references to the literary works of H.P. Lovecraft, which again is a history lesson, and you kind of take something from the story even if you were previously unaware of H.P. Lovecraft as a person, but also his literature. And to that said, we are also introduced to a character called Calypso Jones, as portrayed by Robin Holloway. And to start with, I thought that was a rather unusual choice, because you have a very strong TARDIS team as it is, as portrayed throughout Scorched Earth and Cry of the Vulturess, and a number of the other Sixth Doctor stories that we've seen over the past few years. And I felt like adding somebody else into the mix was a bit like the Fifth Doctor era of Doctor Who, or even the current series of Doctor Who Series 11 and 12, where it can be often quite hard to designate different things for the companions to do, and you're kind of looking for different tasks just to occupy the character for a while. However, throughout this story it's a little bit of an exception, because we have that divide down the middle. Instead, this time round, Calypso is a perfect complement to Constance Clarke, because it essentially gives Constance somebody else to talk to who isn't H.P. Lovecraft, whilst Flip and the Doctor lay unconscious on the floor because their mind has been plummeted into H.P. Lovecraft's head. And I think that Calypso she was the character that I was referring to earlier about everything that H.P. Lovecraft doesn't like. She is the embodiment of all of these things that he critiques. And I thought that was really interesting to watch unfold throughout this story, because it is a perfect example of the far, far future, and regardless of these people that are hating certain aspects of society in history, no matter what, people will go ahead and do what they want anyway, if it is what they believe in. And I think that we have a strong story about personality there, and people just doing what they want, and because of that they are driving the future forward. It's a very positive way to display it. Likewise, of course, we've got Flip and the Doctor trapped in H.P. Lovecraft's head, and because we have that division, we have a relationship that is a little bit different to some of the other stories that we've had throughout this trilogy. This time round we almost revert back to the Curse of Davros form of relationship that we have between the Sixth Doctor and Flip due to the absence of Constance Clarke. So you kind of have this quirky teenager with Flip that is thoroughly enjoyable once again, with portrayed by Lisa Greenwood, and then you have that more guidance, fatherly or uncle figure with the Sixth Doctor, who is absolutely brilliant once again throughout this story. He has lots of great moments. In particular, there is a moment at the very end of this story where the Doctor addresses H.P. Lovecraft, because he believes that they are the same, regardless of the beliefs that he has, that the Doctor, of course, doesn't share. And the companions go off to the TARDIS, and he decides to have a word with H.P. Lovecraft on his own, essentially. And it's one of those moments that again shows the powerful nature of Colin Baker as a Sixth Doctor, and I genuinely felt lots of emotion with the speech that Colin portrayed throughout this story. To start with, it was excellently written by Robert Valentine. You could tell a lot of effort had gone into writing this speech and making it sound perfect, and I think that when Colin delivers it, that is the extra level. I think that Colin is perfect with speeches, and again, this is another example of one of those Doctor Who stories that basically showcases why the Sixth Doctor is one of the best Doctors within Doctor Who history, and boy is he underestimated. It's a perfect way to end the story. It's a nice message, and again, it's showing that somebody is acknowledging somebody else's differences. The Doctor is acknowledging the flaws that H.P. Lovecraft does have, even saying within the early half of the story, he is one of those writers within human history that I really did not want to meet, which again stands out quite a lot for Doctor Who, especially comparing to the likes of, say, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, where the Doctor was thoroughly excited to meet this person from human history. However, it works both ways, and I think that is a great thread represented throughout this story, and something that doesn't change. The Doctor has that divide between the historical character of the episode, and that makes for a different relationship. One thing that I thought I would end up criticising throughout this review is basically we have the Somnifax, and the Somnifax is a thing that recreates everybody's fears, and it gets a nightmare and makes it a reality, which God knows what it would create if it was going into my nightmares. But basically it's a nightmare creature that fuels hatred and fuels all these horrible things, which means that HP Lovecraft is an absolute breeding ground for this creature and an ideal companion, and because of that we have the creation of HP Lovecraft's world within his head, using all of his different characters as well as a number of alter egos in there as well. And it kind of reminded me of the Matrix within The Deadly Assassin, where you have all these unusual location changes, including some rundown 1930s streets with almost a hunter on horseback, then you've got a boat sequence in there as well. It's an action-packed story, but also at the same time I kind of felt, is this original, making a writer and their creations reality? I do believe that there was something a number of years ago, in fact, about making a rather famous writer in today's day and age a Doctor Who story focused around their work and making that reality. It's something that isn't particularly that original, and as I said, I thought I would end up criticising it. However, in the case of this story, to be honest, I think it just shows you don't need to be 100% original to create a good episode that is enjoyable to listen to, because yes, it's not the most original idea, but it works because of the strong, visionary and amazing ideas that are represented throughout the script that Robert Valentine has created. Near to the very end of the story, we also tread on a little bit of a personal element with HP Lovecraft himself, which I'm not really going to address throughout this review because that is something that you should go and find out yourself if you decide to listen to this story. However, we delve into his personal life and his relations to the outer world in a way, and some more personal connections with his character. I would have loved to see more of that because, again, it was something that I was referring to earlier when I was talking about the fact that although HP Lovecraft has these rather extreme beliefs, you are still reminded that he is a human. He has his own fears and he has his own beliefs in life that are haunting him. It does kind of feel like it ends quite quickly, which is unusual for a monthly range story because normally the 2 hours are padded out very well, and I must say it is episodes the likes of this and episodes the likes of Scorched Earth that I will really miss when it comes to the end of the monthly range in early 2021, because I feel like some stories suit the 2 hour format down to a T. I hope that when we move to box sets we will still see 2 hour stories, because this episode is a perfect piece of entertainment and character work, and if it wasn't 2 hours long it wouldn't be as powerful as it is. But as I say, would it be nice to maybe have a few more links in there to that personal character. I don't know if that's just the inner historical fan within me wanting to see more of 1930s America, or if it would have genuinely positively affected the story. But overall, for the Lovecraft Invasion, as written by Robert Valentine, to be honest, another really good story, and it concludes a really strong Sixth Doctor trilogy and a perfect example of the Sixth Doctor and his strengths on Big Finish, but also the companions that surround him. I like the fact that this story is kind of left on a little bit of an open bookend to see where this TARDIS team go on to next with their adventures throughout space and time. I'm just hoping that we see them again sometime soon. So yeah, overall for the Lovecraft Invasion, a very strong story and a second script from Robert Valentine that I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to, so I really look forward to hearing more from him in the future. If you want something a little bit different that's unique and has that blend between history and sci-fi in a more personal and humane way, then this is definitely a story that is worth considering. So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content each and every week. And of course my next Big Finish main range review will be Time Apart, featuring the Fifth Doctor travelling alone in 4 short stories. But until then, I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.